All right, so you guys really wanted us to dig into this legal battle that's been brewing in the WordPress world.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one, and frankly, it's gotten pretty messy.
Yeah, it has.
So we're talking about a court document detailing a fight between WP Engine,
Huge name in WordPress hosting.
huge, right? WP Engine and Automattic, the company behind WordPress.com.
And of course, led by Matt Mullenweg, the WordPress co-founder.
Right, so that adds a whole other layer to this.
Yeah, it's not just two companies going at it. It's way more complicated.
It really is. So you want the key takeaways here, the potential impact.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so at its core, this is about power.
Yeah, plain and simple, it's a power struggle.
WP Engine is claiming that Mullenweg, using his control over WordPress.
And he's got a lot of it, being the CEO of Automattic and having authority over WordPress.org.
Yeah, that's a lot of power in one person's hands.
Absolutely. So WP Engine is saying he used that power to pressure them into a licensing agreement.
That they saw as extortion. Okay, so break down this licensing agreement for me.
Sure. So Automattic was demanding that WP Engine either hand over 8% of their gross revenue
Wow.
or dedicate a huge chunk of their employees' time to work on core WordPress software.
But under Automatic's direction.
Right. Exactly. So WP Engine wouldn't even have full control over how their resources were being used.
And this was presented like right before a major WordPress conference,
Yep, just a few weeks before WordCamp US.
which WP Engine is arguing was a tactic.
Oh, absolutely. Put them in a corner, force their hand.
Well, they'd feel pressured to agree.
Exactly.
So put yourself in WP Engine's shoes for a second.
Okay.
You've built your entire business model around WordPress,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly you're hit with this demand seemingly out of nowhere.
What do you do?
Yeah, what happens next?
Well, things escalate pretty quickly.
Of course.
Mullenweg gives this keynote address at WordCamp US,
Yeah.
and he publicly criticizes WP Engine, even suggests their employees might lose jobs if they support him. Yeah, then he starts restricting WP Engine's access to essential WordPress resources.
Like what?
Like plugin updates.
Okay, hold on. Plugin updates.
Yeah.
For those of us who, aren't super tech savvy, why is that such a big deal?
So think of plugins like apps for your website.
Okay.
They add functionality, but they need regular updates to stay secure and compatible with the latest WordPress version.
Right.
Without those updates, websites become vulnerable to hackers.
Oh, no.
They can even break down entirely.
So Mullenweg cutting off their access to updates, essentially, he put their customers' websites at risk.
Exactly.
That's a huge deal.
It is, and it gets even more complicated.
How so?
Well, Mullenweg also targeted one of WP Engine's most popular plugins,
Which one?
Advanced Custom Fields, ACF.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's pretty popular, and he
Yeah.
basically took control of it, renamed it, and pushed his version out to users without their consent.
Whoa, hold on. Without their consent?
Yeah, so WP Engine lost control of their own plugin.
That sounds, I don't know, messy is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, it was a power move for sure.
Was he trying to, sabotage WP Engine's reputation?
It definitely seems that way.
Wow.
He even made users declare they weren't affiliated with WP Engine when logging into WordPress.org.
Really?
Yeah, and then he launched ads for his own hosting company, Pressable.
Directly targeting WP Engine customers.
You got it.
So this wasn't just, behind-the-scenes pressure. This was very public.
Oh, yeah. The court documents lay out a very deliberate campaign to undermine their business.
So how did WP Engine respond to all of this?
They filed a lawsuit claiming that Mullenweg's actions were attempted extortion
Basically saying he's trying to strong-arm us into this licensing agreement.
by threatening our business, yeah, and our customers.
And what about Mullenweg? What's his side of the story?
He claims he was acting in the best interests of the WordPress community,
Okay.
citing security concerns with WP Engine's plugins,
Right.
and arguing that everyone should contribute fairly to the open source project.
Okay, so he's using the community good argument.
Yeah, but the court wasn't totally convinced.
So what did the court decide?
They granted WP Engine a preliminary injunction.
Which is a pretty big win for them, right?
It is. It forces Mullenweg and Automattic to restore WP Engine's access.
Okay.
Stop interfering with their plugins and basically back off.
Wow.
This suggests the court saw merit in WP Engine's claims and felt they needed to intervene to prevent further harm.
So the court sided with WP Engine, at least for now.
For now, yeah.
But what does this all mean for everyone involved?
Yeah, WP Engine, Automattic, Mullenweg, the entire WordPress community. This isn't just a business spat, it has way bigger implications.
It really does.
This case has exposed a fundamental tension in the open source world.
What do you mean?
What happens when someone with immense power within a community-driven project also has a competing business interest?
Right, it's like a conflict of interest.
Exactly. And the court's decision has sent shockwaves through the open source world, and now everyone's trying to figure out what comes next.
Yeah, what happens now?
That's the big question.
That's what we're all waiting to see.
Yeah, this is just the
This
beginning.
is going to be interesting.
Oh, absolutely. It's really interesting to look at the court's rationale for granting that injunction.
Yeah, because it gets to the heart of the issue.
It really does. The court emphasized that WordPress, at its core,
Right.
is an open source project,
Meaning,
meaning it's built on the principles of free access and collaborative development.
right, that's the whole idea behind open source. Anyone can use it, modify it, contribute to it.
Exactly.
So how did the court see Mullenweg's actions as violating that?
They found that his moves, even though he framed them as about security and community benefit, were actually aimed at harming a competitor and potentially coercing them into a financially beneficial agreement.
Okay.
They weren't convinced that the security risk posed by WP Engine's plugins was significant enough to warrant the drastic actions he took.
So it's like he was using the guise of protecting the community to actually further his own business interests.
That's basically what the court concluded.
Wow.
They pointed to his public attacks on WP Engine, the way he took over their plugin,
Right?
even the ads targeting their customers,
Yeah.
as evidence that this wasn't simply about keeping WordPress secure.
It's interesting. The court didn't just focus on the technical aspects of the case.
Right.
They also considered the potential harm to WP Engine's customers and the wider WordPress community.
Absolutely. They recognize that many businesses and individuals rely on WordPress.
Yeah, for sure.
And that disrupting the platform,
Okay.
even temporarily,
Mm.
could have serious consequences.
Right. Imagine if your website suddenly became vulnerable or lost functionality just because you're caught in the crossfire.
Exactly.
That's a scary thought.
It is, and the court was sensitive to that.
The court also said that granting the injunction wouldn't force Mullenweg to provide free services to a competitor.
Which is what he had argued.
Right, but they saw it as restoring a level playing field.
That had been disrupted by his actions. They basically said, look, everyone is entitled to participate in the WordPress ecosystem, and you can't use your position to exclude someone just because they're a competitor.
So this brings us back to that central question.
Yeah.
Can one person, even a co-founder,
Mm.
wield this much control over an open source project, especially when they have a competing business?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is.
And the court's decision seems to suggest that the answer is no.
Wow.
This case sets an important precedent for open source projects.
How so?
It highlights the need for transparency and checks and balances to prevent abuse of power.
Okay, so let's talk about the impact of all this.
Okay.
We've got WP Engine obviously relieved by the injunction.
Yeah, for sure.
But how does this decision affect Automattic, Mullenweg, and the broader WordPress community? This isn't just a business bet. This has much broader implications.
Absolutely. For Automattic and Mullenweg, this is a definite setback.
In what way?
It limits their ability to leverage his dual role for business advantage. And it raises serious questions about his leadership and commitment to open source principles.
Yeah, I can see that.
He's going to have to work hard to regain the trust of the community and prove that he's acting in everyone's best interests, not just his own.
It puts them in a tough spot strategically, too.
Yeah.
If they can't use those strong-arm tactics, how do they compete with companies like WP Engine while also maintaining their influence over WordPress?
It's a delicate balance. They might need to explore more collaborative approaches,
Like what?
working with the community rather than dictating terms.
Okay.
This could involve establishing clearer governance structures for WordPress, ensuring more transparency in decision-making, and perhaps even relinquishing some control.
That's a big ask.
It is.
And what about the WordPress community itself? This whole thing has been incredibly divisive, people taking sides, debating the ethics of Mullenweg's actions.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
How do you see this playing out in the long run?
I think this case has been a real wake-up call for the community. It's highlighted the potential vulnerabilities of an open source project when so much power is concentrated in the hands of one person.
So it's exposed some cracks in the foundation, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
What can be done to address these issues and ensure something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, there are several things that community could consider.
Like,
One is establishing a more formal governance structure with checks and balances to prevent any single individual from having too much control.
okay, that makes sense.
Another is promoting greater transparency in decision making,
Uh,
so everyone understands how decisions are made and who's influencing them.
and this also seems like a good opportunity to have some open and honest conversations about the role of commercial interests within the WordPress ecosystem.
You're absolutely right. As WordPress continues to grow and more businesses build around it,
Yeah.
it's crucial to have clear guidelines and ethical frameworks to navigate these complex relationships.
Because as we've seen,
Right.
ignoring these issues can have damaging consequences.
For everyone involved, yeah.
I feel like we've really gone down a rabbit hole here.
We have.
From like the nitty-gritty of plugins
Yeah.
to these big philosophical questions about open source.
It really highlights the challenges facing so many open source projects today.
Yeah.
The tension between collaboration and commercialization,
Right.
the power dynamics, who gets to make the rules.
It's all there.
It's all there. In this case, it really throws those issues into sharp relief.
Yeah, this isn't just about WP Engine and Automattic anymore.
No,
It's about setting a precedent for how these projects are governed
exactly.
and making sure the community's interests are
Yeah.
protected.
It's a wake-up call, and not just for WordPress,
Right.
but for any open source project that's achieved, significant commercial success.
Yeah, because as more businesses build on these platforms,
The stakes get higher,
for sure.
and the potential for conflict, it intensifies.
So big picture, what are the takeaways here? What should people listening to this be thinking about?
Especially if they're involved with WordPress or other open source projects.
Exactly.
First, I think, recognizing that open source isn't some utopia.
Right, it's not perfect.
It's not. It's subject to the same power dynamics.
And potential for abuse.
Yeah, as any other sphere. And we need to be vigilant about protecting those core values
The openness, the collaboration, the shared ownership.
that make open source so valuable.
Exactly. And that means being aware of those power dynamics, right?
Absolutely.
Who has control over key resources?
Mm-hmm.
How are decisions being made?
Right.
Are there mechanisms in place to ensure accountability?
We need to move beyond just trusting blindly and demand more transparency from those in positions of authority.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
It might involve establishing clearer governance structures, codes of conduct, even legal frameworks.
To prevent these kinds of power grabs.
Exactly.
And this case also shows how important community engagement is.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the technical stuff.
For sure.
But open source projects, they thrive because of the people.
The people who contribute, use them, advocate for them.
The community is WordPress's greatest strength.
Absolutely.
And now is the time for that community to come together,
Yeah.
have those tough conversations,
Find solutions.
protect the long-term health of the project.
It's not about taking sides or demonizing anyone.
Right.
It's about recognizing the complexity
Working together.
to create a more equitable and resilient ecosystem.
Exactly. The future of WordPress, the future of open source.
Depends on the community.
Yeah, we need to move beyond the drama of this specific case.
And focus on building something stronger.
More resilient for everyone.
This deep dive has been, I don't know, a lot to process.
It has
We've
to.
uncovered some concerning issues,
Yeah.
but I think we've also seen the power of a community coming together to address them.
It's a good reminder that the future of open source isn't, predetermined.
It's in our hands.
It's shaped by the choices we make, the conversations we have, the actions we take.
So let's keep learning, keep questioning
Keep pushing.
for a more open, equitable, and sustainable open source future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Sounds good.
As always, we encourage you to explore the sources for yourself.
Form your own opinions.
This is just the beginning of the conversation.
The future of WordPress, the future of open source.
It's in our hands.
Let's make sure we're all part of shaping it.